All right, let's turn our attention back to one of the big stories making international headlines. Anticipation mounting ahead of the opening of voting stations in the U.S. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump now having wrapped up their addresses to close their campaigns, with predictions still showing that this is going to be a razor-thin race. Let's shift our focus now to the economic relations between South Africa and America and how this election may ultimately change that, if at all. And for that, let's bring in economist Ntombana-Mbele Thomo, who joins us via our video link this morning. Great to see you as always, Ntombana. Thanks so much indeed for making us make sense of a story you simply cannot avoid, no matter where you are in the world. Perhaps as a start, let's take stock of the kind of relations that exist between South Africa and the U.S. We know that, the U.S. is one of our biggest trading partner, and that's why we're watching the story very closely.
Absolutely. Good morning, Ayanda and you viewers. Thank you again for having me. I think this is a very important day, also for South Africa, not just for U.S. citizens. As you rightfully mentioned, the U.S. is one of South Africa's leading trade partners. It's the third largest, to be exact, following after China and Germany, who own the lion's share. And so that really signifies why this is crucial and important in terms of economic benefit for South Africa. As you know, South Africa is part of the AGOA Pact, which is the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And we've seen this act really benefit South Africa in terms of various industries, from minerals to the citrus industry, being able to create sustainable employment, but being able to signify increased export opportunities for South Africa. And so, yes, this is equally an important day for us when it comes to economics for South Africa in terms of the U.S. elections.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it's difficult to tell how this will swing. I mean, predictions even in the U.S. Are showing that this is possibly a neck-on-neck, or yes, it's very tight in the lead up to the polls finally beginning. And I wonder if we are able to build scenarios at this early stage around how these trade relations might change depending who wins.
I think that is the issue that we're all contending with. We have seen that there has been a lot of political turbulence and tension between South Africa and the U.S. in the build-up to these elections. We've seen how most of the members of Congress, as well as Biden's administration, have spoken about how uneasy they are with our close relations to Russia, to China, as well as to Iran, as it pertains to the BRICS membership. But secondly, we've also seen that South Africa taking a very prominent stance with the International Criminal Justice case against Israel, has also had members of the Washington Congress come back and say they're not really comfortable with the actions of South Africa. As you would know, they are on the opposing side, almost agreeing with the, or rather supporting Israel. And so these have been some of the political tensions that we've been experiencing between South Africa and U.S. in the build-up of the U.S. elections. But what you've seen, Nyanda, is that in that too, you have seen the South Africa the Tomorrow Investment Conference that took place 7 days ago, where South African economy took its experts from the electricity ministry, the finance ministry, the mining, as well as the minerals sector. And they went and spoke to the policymakers in the U.S. and actually spoke about how infrastructure in South Africa has really gotten better. And we've seen that there's evidence. So to your point, from a Biden and a Democrat's point of view, South Africa has a much more of a solid, I'd say, economic and political relationship. In as much as there are challenges and as much as there are differences, I find that with the Biden administration, there is much more concession. Whereas with the Trump administration, that is what is going to be a bit more contentious. As we've seen, the former President Trump has come out with some strong views on South African economy. He's spoken on South Africa's crime and made really, preposterous views on how South Africa's crime is, the worst in the world. Some of the views which are not really backed up by evidence. And so you really wonder, with Donald Trump coming with a much more of a nationalist agenda, when it comes to trade, what will really be the impact of the South African economy in terms of, one, the AGOA renewal, because that's really our biggest contention. But secondly, from a political stance where you can have different varying political stances, but there still is that level of respect. there still is an environment where you can facilitate trade favorably. So I think that's going to be quite interesting. I think from a Democrat's point of view, there'll be continuity. But if there's going to be, the resurgence of the Republicans, there could be some form of trouble there.
Yeah, I think you've tried as much as you can to be euphemistic. I've heard people take it all the way to say that, in fact, Trump doesn't care about Africa, let alone South Africa.
I think it would be remiss of him not to care. There's over 600 U.S. companies that are headquartered in South Africa. South Africa still remains the most industrialized country on the African continent. There is the emergence of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And all of these things are really shifting the geopolitical authority, as one would call it. There is an almost a new emergence of the African continent being a big player in the politics of the world. And so I think it wouldn't really fair Donald Trump or his administration to not be bothered about Africa, because in any case, the AGOA agreement is also quite beneficiating for his country in terms of, if you look at the minerals, that they import from gold as well as platinum. So, I mean, it's always, I think, an unfavorable argument that people use that we need the West more than they need us, but that's not always the case.
All right, we'll see how it all goes. As always, we appreciate your insights. Economist Ntombana-Mbele speaking to us there live ahead of the opening of polling in the US. That's when, of course, we expect millions of people to cast their ballots in order to elect the 47th president of the United States. Ntombana-Mbele Thomo helping us make sense of what the economic machinations, dynamics might look like if, in fact, a Biden or a Harris administration emerges.